thanks so much for that little introduction, Susan. So yeah, my name is Austin. I did a few pieces of analysis on this existing MoveSmart MS program in relation to anxiety. So a little bit about me. I did my undergraduate here, I did my PhD here, where Rebecca was my supervisor, and I'm in RCSI Sim Centre now, so there's a lovely photo of us. So why anxiety in particular? Why is it important when it comes to people with MS? So if we just loosely define anxiety as worry about unpredictable future events, and then we consider MS with a disease course that is almost defined by that unpredictability, you can see how people with MS may have additional challenges when it comes to anxiety. So it's no surprise then that MS is common, and to what Fahy was talking about earlier, interconnected both with other psychological symptoms, social symptoms, but also the physical side of things as well. In particular, fatigue is a big one. So with all these intrinsic kind of challenges, it's not surprising that the prevalence of anxiety in people with MS is really high. So recent enough meta-analysis had this around 50% of people in Europe with MS with clinically significant levels of anxiety. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't say I do not think we should be pathologizing this experience of anxiety. But yeah, 49% is really quite high levels, and we even had a study during my PhD, which was around COVID time, which somewhat explains it, where we had over 72% of our sample with clinically significant levels of anxiety. So this is huge, huge numbers. So why did we choose MoveSmart MS as the program to evaluate here? So originally the idea was to design our own support. So to do that, we did a systematic review. We had PPI input into a cross-sectional study, which we then took and went and got more PPI put into an interview study that looked really at the factors that we should be targeting, but also the desired features of supports. And the more that kind of came out, we realized actually there might be things out there, and particularly with MoveSmart MS, the big features were exercise, social support, self-efficacy, and those goal-related behaviors. So from those first three studies, those were the big things that we wanted to target, which MoveSmart MS is already targeting. So on top of that, we found through our qualitative research that loads of people with MS reported already having these benefits from these supports, but that the supports weren't necessarily being advertised or marketed or explained as potential mental health supports. Another nice thing about MoveSmart MS, like Susan was saying, is that it's stratified by age, by ability, by symptomology, and that was a really desired feature. And to go back to what Sinead was talking about earlier, the accessibility of it being online, and it came up in the PPI panel meeting as well, people not having to travel, being able to engage on days where they're experiencing fatigue. So there was a lot of features of what we would have used to create a support anyway, so why not use and analyze what's already being used rather than kind of use those resources in that way. So we had a few main pieces of analysis. The first thing was to analyze the factors that might predict anxiety, so looking at anxiety at baseline and the factors associated with that. So we ran a hierarchical regression to do that. We then wanted to look at, okay, if there is a change in anxiety, and hopefully there will be, what are the factors that's driving that change? And then we wanted to run a reflexive static analysis of focus group data in order to get a better understanding of patient experiences with the program. So I'll mention at this point, to our knowledge, this is the first study to look at an exercise program for people with MS where anxiety was the primary outcome. So we had 160 people with MS complete both pre and post program measures, and we had 25 people with MS take part in the follow-up focus groups. So what we found at baseline is that younger age, lower mobility disability, higher levels of fatigue, and higher perceived physical impact of MS were all associated with higher anxiety at baseline. So thankfully, as part of the second part, anxiety did significantly reduce as part of taking part of the MoveSmart MS program, really quite significantly. So over 20% of our original sample had clinically significant levels of anxiety, and that came all the way down to just over 6% following engaging with MoveSmart MS. So that's a really effective program for managing anxiety. And as Susan said, there was also reductions in depression, fatigue, physical impact of MS, walking ability improved. So there's a number of domains here improving, which again kind of speaks to Phoenix's piece of interconnectivity. So in terms of what was driving this change, the only thing that came back in terms of our validated measures was the reduced perceived physical impact of MS. So I'll touch more on what other things might have been driving it, but particularly from our qualitative part, we didn't have a measure of social support being taken originally. So through the qualitative side, that came through as being really, really strong. The peer support elements came through as being really, really valuable, particularly in relation to anxiety and to mental health. Other things that we were able to capture through our thematic analysis were considerable praise for program execution, both the online setting and the accessibility of that, but also for program coordinators if the program that runs really, really well. So another thing we captured is the amount of noticed improvements, and this is a really quite a nice domain of what we were able to capture here. So noticed improvements related to individuals' understanding of MS, symptom improvements, but these are not just being noticed by the individual themselves. These are people reporting back to us that their friends and family have noticed behavioural changes, changes even in kind of the way that they're presenting mental health-wise and stuff. So yeah, really valuable in multiple domains. So I guess just to finish here, the key takeaways I kind of want you to come away from with this. Yes, anxiety may be more common in people with younger age, people with lower disability, people with higher levels of fatigue, but there's a clear need for routine clinical assessment of anxiety for all people with MS. So another thing to touch on here, MoveSmart MS is highly effective support for people with experienced anxiety, and creating awareness around that would be really valuable. There's need for more exploration into the mechanisms behind this change, though. I think there's more to uncover here. Yes, reducing the physical perceived impact of MS is important. Also through the qualitative stuff, goal setting is certainly very important, as well as the peer support, but more explanation is really needed there to really hone in how we can further improve these kinds of supports. And just to leave you with, it's likely that other supports exist which are tackling these similar factors, but again aren't being advertised or that people are not aware of, that could be having benefits in this realm. So just creating more awareness about that, I think, is really, really important going forward. So here's some of the studies we did in relation to this. There's my email if anyone is interested in any element of collaboration or questioning. So thank you. I'll pass it back over to Stephen.